Hey guys, Thomas Lucilla Jr. here, aka Mustached Tom, here to review the movie Cobweb. If you haven't been enjoying this full movie review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out these links in the description. One will head you over to my petition to help out smaller YouTubers. Second and third to my Patreon and PayPal where you can help support me and my channel directly. And fourth to my Discord server where you can join, collab, shill, and do all that cool stuff. And shilling will be reminded at the end of the review. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's get into the movie of Cobweb. Now, I have not seen any trailers for this movie either. In junction with the last movie I just reviewed, I actually just came across this one, actually more so in doing so for the previous movie I just watched and reviewed, which being The Voyage of Demeter. So I went into this completely blind. So here we are. And now we can talk about the plot, story, and all that cool stuff as objectively as possible. So the movie begins with with us being told that it's 1 week before Halloween. And we are met with our young character named Peter, who's we see get some piano lessons at the start of the movie, but late at night he begins to initially start hearing noises at the far side of his room, and hears even more. He rushes over to turn the light on, and he tries to listen in, and when he knocks on the door, he gets a response. Initially, he goes to tell his parents about this, and of course, when his parents try to get over, it's the cliche of one of them, this being the mom, trying to check in. There is no response, as in now the parents don't believe the kid when he's trying to tell them that there's something more going on. And we have his sort of additional plot point of him going to school. Here, he is the quiet, sort of introverted kid that doesn't really talk to much anyone. Thusly, he gets bullied as a result of being sort of this placed kid of trouble, of cliche, dumber, I don't know, of troubled kid, I guess. But we meet his substitute teacher, Miss Divine, which, last name, wow, conveniently, just telling you what you need to know about the character outside of what we are told about the character. Like, wow, just truly something else there. And indeed, we have one of the bully characters, or the only bully character, re-threatened Peter when recess is set to come around. Despite this, Peter remains the only one to not go out during recess, to not be fated to deal with that. And we have, I suppose, a little bit of symbolism with the movie being called Cobweb, where we see a spider appear, crawl up the desk, and having Peter freak out at it. And the teacher promptly showing how to remove it from the equation with sort of this gentle hand, a cup, and some paper, trapping it along the way. Which kind of is supposed to be indicative of like where this movie is supposed to it's supposed to like give you a hint about like where this movie is going or something or other, right? So keep that in mind. And tosses the spider out the window as letting it go. Meanwhile, we cut back to him at home, and during this little food excursion of dinner, or whatever it is, the father begins to talk about how, while some time ago, indistinct time ago, during Halloween, a girl was whisked away and was never to be seen again. And that's why they see it as they need to protect Peter by not having, by being a little bit stricter, by holding him back in certain regards, things along that nature. Helicopter parents to the degree of potentially even being in the harmful state of helicopter parenting levels of degree definitely start to shine through later on in the movie, and even potentially even worse than that, if everything is to be believed. Despite that, later on in the night, Peter, once again in his room, hears a voice this time. And, once again, he calls out, and the dad prompts, saying, well, now it's the dad listening in, the dad proposes that it's probably just a bunch of rats. So he gets out a bunch of, food that's going to be poisonous to the rats. They'll be lured in, and they will eat it and die. This is another setup to get paid off later on in the movie. So, anyways, we cut back to the school where Peter and the school class are just drawing stuff. He individually writes "help me" on his little drawing, which is the first indication to Divine that he, needs help. So, she proceeds to visit on her own accord, which, I don't know when this movie is set. She has a cell phone, but he lives in a place where the household doesn't allow any technology whatsoever, no TV, no any sort of media, so I'm currently thinking that this movie is supposed to take place in current timeline, but he's just even coddled away from current tech. Because, again, Divine herself shows that she has what looks like a current phone anyway, as we'll see later on in the movie. So, I'm a little bit off-put by this part, where she just sort of visits on her own, with the sign being "help me." Usually you would call, child services to deal with this sort of, if the regards were, to be taken seriously, which I suppose they would be if you thought that was the case. If the, sign was reading "help me," if we're taking it seriously, you would probably opt to do it that way, but no, she just visits on her own for whatever reason. So the mom, since she would have the right to in this case, since she went by herself, pushes her away. Again, this is her property, and since this isn't some sort of official capacity by which, again, could have been done so with, again, child services, which they could have shown papers, been like, we actually do think that there's something serious going on here. If that was the case, they would have been allowed to enter in more than likely. So again, just goes to show how stupid this moment is. And during this, after closing the door, she interrogates her son and prompts by saying, when asked about who's the one saying "help me" in the little picture, he refers to her. She is asking for help, being the first instance of that, which throws the mom off by a degree of very deep concern, but we're not sure why quite yet. And indeed, later on in the light, Peter once again hears the voice. And Peter even allows her to stay as it were, as she's like, oh, should I go or whatever, and he's like, no, please stay or whatever. So we see a prompt where the bully pushes him around once again, and when he returns, he talks about it with her and says that if he wants to get back at Brian, that's the name of the bully, Brian the bully, that Peter must take action into his own hands. Which, when he does chase him down, he just so happens to push Brian when he's in front of the staircase, pushing him all the way down, and causing him to have a major leg injury, to the point of needing crutches. So the parents are called in, and as a result, he is then grounded and placed into a basement, which was hidden behind a refrigerator, which immediately puts up a red flag of why there would need to be a basement behind a refrigerator of all things. So now, definitely, the parents have a big flag in front of them of what kind of parents were they and what were they doing with a room that was now blocked by a refrigerator all of a sudden. Seems a little bit odd. And the principal talks to Divine about how there was no clear sign, even though she had one, so I'm not sure why she's not pointing that out, of him needing help, and that they can't officially do anything to help Peter, even though, again, she still had the picture, I would assume, unless she gave that away during that first confrontation. I don't remember. Anyway, divisive to say, we're going to move on anyways, because it doesn't really matter all that too much in the grand scheme of things. So, all the while, she's giving off some homework, and we see that Peter is being told, she couldn't stop thinking about how, he could be potentially in trouble, so she promptly gives her number by just doing so and separating the dashes as if to proceed it to be like a date or something, or a score or something. I guess that somehow allots the parents of not finding out, even though they hold on to it and look at it and could probably start to put something together, unless the dashes were very clearly there. I don't remember if they were or not. But we see that Peter is being suggested for homeschooling after this whole ordeal. Because she goes back to check on Peter anyway, on her own accord again. So she's there to only return that paper, and because I guess she is a substitute on top of all of this, so and he's still in the basement, by the by, and the only thing that is preceding him not getting through is the machine just happening to kick back up when he tries to signal out that he wants help from the basement. But it isn't too long after she leaves, and either if it's a day later or just moments later after that Peter is released and let back into his own room, in which he desperately, once they walk away, is prompted to knock on the wall. She tells him, the voice, to remove the wallpaper, and he spots a hole and begins to look inside of it. He proceeds to toss a red ball in and see an eye look back at him. This individual claims to be his older sister, and to Sorry, I lost my place in my notes real quick. There we go. But he must move a clock to where another hidden door is hidden behind. Hearing some noises, just trying to put together all that. While the night goes on, he sees a flash of a person. Then it turns pitch black. I guess this is like a part of a nightmare sequence at this point. He sees his dad in the corner and sees his mom trying to grab him. All a part of this dream sequence, I guess this is. And after being spooked by all of that, he's then told that the parents have already killed before, which is, if there weren't already red flags before, boy oh boy, he gets told to dig up an location and finds a skull where he was told to dig up. So this is just one big just oof on top of everything else. And he quickly covers it back up when the mom is like trying to get to him. He notices the homework from his refrigerator. Instead of calling 911, because he's a kid, he instead chooses to opt to pick the number on the homework, assuming that this was a way of getting his substitute teacher's attention. This is why you gotta teach your kids about dialing 911 in case of emergencies, you know? I think that's an important thing to teach your kids how to do when they're old enough to know how to do that on their own. Just in case of emergencies. Obviously, this kid was not taught to do that, because, boy, is this dumb. Unfortunately, the mom sees all of this and picks up the phone, and the teacher has to put on a little bit of a performance saying how checking in and all that. The mother mentions a she after Peter is sort of knowingly seen all of this stuff, but this is the first time in the movie that Peter's warned not to essentially listen to that voice, this she, this sister that he's been discussing throughout the entire movie. This is the first time the mom acknowledges that there is indeed this other individual here. We see that the dad later on even knows that he is awake and is told, just doing what we can. So, Peter is then prompted the next day to dig up a little bit of the pumpkin rot that has been spreading throughout the pumpkin patch that they have outside. So, while Peter deals with that, and I guess this is during Halloween now, so a week has passed throughout the entire events of everything I've been saying. It was a little bit unclear, but whatever. The mom tells the trick-or-treaters to go away. She doesn't want any of this stuff infecting her kid. Super protect mode, 24/7, not even participating in Halloween, none of it. You just get nothing. You lose, sir. Good day. And then Dad, during their morning meal, the next morning, during the food, the mom and the dad are primarily the ones eating, and the dad is the one who first promptly saying how the food tastes a bit different than usual, and the mom tasting desperate sips of like curiosity and maybe even a little intrigue, and then the dad finally puts two and two together that the rat poisoning from earlier in the movie has been used by Peter. Looking at him, and Peter retorts that he managed how he says to both of them that they hurt his sister, the one that he's been talking throughout the movie now. We see that the mom tries to get to the phone, but the phone line has been cut from their household. The dad is killed by the poisoning first. The mom manages to give chase and even attempts to, I guess now suddenly, try to kill her own son with a knife, but is promptly then, as soon as she grabs him, she begins to puke out and is tossed down the rest of the stairs. He grabs the keys, and the last thing she manages to blurt out before officially dying is to warn him once a second time now to not open that door, but he will now ignore her completely. Why would he have any faith in his parents after the amount of evidence that he has received that they are just horrible people? So he knocks over the clock, blocking the door, unlocks the door, and indeed she opens the door. And Peter sees the figure, that is the thing you see in the poster there, briefly come out, and he immediately books it, being immediately freaked out. So, unfortunately, Brian the bully and his three cousins are he told his older cousins to wanting to get revenge on Peter, and they just happen to get this little arrival after all of this has occurred, but they are at his household now with weapons in tow, ready to cause some trouble and perhaps get a little bit of revenge. So they make their way into the household, and they head in, and Peter decidedly just starts to hide. Meanwhile, we begin to follow our now four intruders as they begin to get hunted down one by one in the household by our Cobweb villain character, who moves around like a spider that can crawl on the ceilings and can whip around her hair as a distraction and do all this stuff. We get one of them getting dragged down under a piano and being insta-blood spreaded, so she's super strong. One of the bullies sees the dead mom, but the door closes. We see one of the others get grabbed and pulled away, and Brian sees that and screams out, but he too is killed in the process by looking up above and being pulled up into a gory dismay of violence of being dismembered. And then the sub-divine begins to head out. Yes, he's only beginning to get head out, despite being called, obviously, some time ago at this point. So, I don't know. I guess they didn't want to prompt these things to be, like, one on top of each other. They needed conveniently get there after the parents died, and she needed to get there after all four of them had died. But Peter witnesses the torso of a person reach the hallway, and the head not being attached to said torso. She climbs on top of the bed and begins to just talk to him about being how she was the one who was abused and treated like this monster, and how he was treated like this golden child. So I don't know what her full intentions were, rather if they were just to keep him in the same confines or kill him. It seems like it's the former, like she wanted to put him where she was now, I guess. Because, again, she doesn't kill him immediately, that being Peter, when she definitely has the chance. She, again, is just talking to him at this point. So Peter is the one who ends up being trapped in that small little room that we saw. In fact, she even knew that he had asked for help. So with that being said, Sub-Divine arrives at the scene. As I already previously mentioned, she pulls out her cell phone and she's about to call the police, and when she sees that strand of hair, she puts down her phone instead of, I don't know, multitasking, despite seeing the carnage in the main room, not already calling the police, which is, considering that the door was already opened and there was already that carnage in the main hall, I think that she could have, again, multitasked and called the police. Probably wouldn't have mattered, but at least it would have made her look good instead of absolutely destroying her character in one fell swoop. But hey, it is what it is. Destroy one character through one action. It's okay. We're here to not stand that and absolutely criticize it every single time, because what the fuck. But nonetheless, she is slashed at but grabs a weapon. Meanwhile, Peter's trying to call out for her to run away, but she is making her way deeper inside, gets to the room, grabs him, pulls him up to the door after getting the key, but he is grabbed once again when she is outside, and he's pulled back into like that other basement, but the one behind the refrigerator. And this is actually when I discovered her name. The quote-unquote sister's name was Sarah. So, Peter, seeing how he got trapped down below, we have Divine in the corner, and we have the monster in between the two, and her hair is like currently stranded downward. Peter grabs onto her hair, which prompts her to get distracted enough for him to climb all the way up, and to have her in combination with him reconfine her back into said basement locker and close the hatch. Thus, she begins to explain, while he's still freaked out, that every single creak, every single nudge that has been previously established from the earlier parts of the movie were all her, and despite him wanting to leave, is that she will always be a part of him now. This will be a haunting memory that he will never ever forget. And the movie just sort of ends with this sort of notion that she will, I guess, continue on, question mark, without what seemingly doesn't seem to be any real resolution. Like, she does have super strength. Like, clearly that cage isn't going to hold her that long, clearly. So I'm not sure what this ending is supposed to even imply. Other than he's going to be haunted, and whether or not that will actually include her or not seems to be undetermined at this point. I'm not really sure. But that is the movie Cobweb. This movie is a little bit interesting, I suppose. I mean, on the one hand, it seems to allude to almost strictly sticking to one story thread throughout the majority of the movie, that being him slowly learning this thread about his parents being worse and worse. There are signals throughout the movie that tell us that despite those threads, that this voice cannot be trusted by the mother, and we're only told that twice from the mother to Peter. So I'm guessing that only she knew about this situation. Or maybe he knew, the father knew too? I'm not really sure in the indication of what he knew or not, but you know, it does come into the question of, did they kill the skull that we see outside, or was that her doing? I mean, she clearly had the capacity to kill a bunch of other people. We see her do it. We don't see the parents kill the skull, we only see him find it. So, were they responsible, or did she prompt that and only blame the parents? The movie kind of puts a question mark on that one. So it really actually does become a question of, well, how bad are the parents? I mean, sure, they were overprotective, but how much of what she was telling them was deception? How much of that was the spider moving in and not being in, you know, until Divine does the, you know, symbolic taking away the cage, until she gets to do it literally at the end of the movie. And again, that open-endedness of, is she even done for, or I don't know, what's the end result of that? Another question. So the movie does pique a few bizarre questions, which I don't think all of them have to be answered. Like, I actually like the first question being prompted is, who did kill that individual? Was it the parents? I mean, it seemed like they were a bit on edge, but it didn't seem like they had murderous intent at any point in the movie. At least, not to my knowledge. Again, they kind of do come off stern, definitely, for sure. But again, never seemingly, outside of that one scene with Divine being there in the household, and the father holding the hammer, kind of creating that tension of that potential, but never even acting on it, seems to be resembling of the end result of that should be, well, no. Again, despite that level of strictness, there even seems to be a level of, like, reservedness to the parents on top of that, or at least the father in the end of that scene anyway. And rather, again, re-prompts the question, was it even them that killed that individual that we see Peter find, or was it her all along? And I'm more prompted to seeing the results of what she was capable of doing, and saying that it was more likely her, and this was all a part of her deception. So I don't know. I feel like the movie kind of lends itself to some questions you just kind of have to think a little bit harder to sort of resolve in your head. Like, not every question is immediately like click and you solve it. You kind of have to think a little bit about it, which I do respect the movie for that level of a sort of, like, you know, not treating your audience like stupid. I do appreciate that there's this level of potential, even mystery, to who is, you know, the ones in the wrong here. And I suppose with the actor, the father actor being Homelander of the boys, this movie kind of made me allude to, man, I would have loved to also see the inverse of this movie in a weird sort of way, where you get the sort of exact thing where it's like a possessed child, quote unquote, is born, but instead of being a monster, maybe is seemingly more so becomes a vigilante of sorts, perhaps, for the brother, resolving issues off on the deep end and maybe have it play out that way. Maybe seemingly off at the beginning at first, seemingly like things just happen to work out for the brother, but then you see the seams start to break apart. Her abilities getting harder and harder to like maintain that illusion as technology just being what it is today, and people's acknowledgement of vigilantism sort of being sensationalized, being able to like people have started to investigate it more and more, and that having it build on top of each other. That movie simultaneously seems like it could be a really cool story, and I just thought of that while I was watching this movie. So I actually think I'm gonna give this movie currently a 6 out of 10. I do still think that the ending portion, question mark, that unresolved sort of bit is a little bit wonky, but outside of that, I would say this movie is actually pretty good. It does have a level of tension. The characters aren't too necessarily complex. They're relatively simple, all things considered. But you do root for the main protagonist of the movie. You do root for Peter. You do hope for things to work out okay. And you do wonder if what he ended up doing was like... And heck, was it even him? Was he the one who poisoned them? I mean, he was the one who was told about the poison, and we don't see him actually doing it in the movie, so was that him, or was that, again, was that her? So again, it plays on that expectation again in the movie, because we never see him do it officially anyway. But he doesn't eat it, so that does lead a heavier credence to it being him in this instance. Meaning that he had knowledge that that was the case and proceeded not to eat the food. But I digress. It still doesn't spell it out, which again, I do appreciate that level of, like, you actually have to pay attention to what's actually happening in the movie and actually recall that information and be like, so it does lead it a lot closer, despite us not seeing that it was him, that it was still him at the end of the day. I do like that result a little bit better, if anything else. So there are these definite connections between the two of them now. They both have murder under their belts, for better or now for worse, if anything. And what does Divine even do with all of that outcome? Her name being sort of a literal or symbolistic type of name, I suppose. 6 out of 10. I think I would have prompted a more solid ending, a more conclusive ending, rather. Because again, I don't think what is left of her is too clear, but I think I don't think it's terrible by any means. I just think it could be a little bit stronger. But anyways, that is my full review of Cobweb. And if you ended up enjoying this review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure that you get those links in the description. One will head you over to my petition to help out smaller YouTubers. Second, to my Patreon at PayPal, where you can help support me and my channel. And fourth, to my Discord server, you can join, collab, and chill, and all that cool stuff. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye.